everybody, welcome back again to Far From Normal's online art class. I'm excited you guys are here today. We have a lot of things to talk about, and I think you're going to be really excited with what we're learning today, because we're going to be taking everything that we've learned so far and really combining it, and you'll be able to see all the steps we've taken, from learning about lines to learning about shading to learning about forms, and where that all is ultimately taking us. So today you're going to need just some plain paper, a pencil, and some colored pencils. If you have colored pencils, you can get them out. Markers or crayons won't work for what we're doing today. It does have to be colored pencils. If you don't have them, that's okay, but if you do, it's going to be a little bit more fun for what we're doing later. So what we're going to talk about today is the forms again, like we talked about last week. But this week we're going to talk about drawing them, and we're going to talk about combining them in a way that you can put them together to make a whole picture. So first we're going to talk about how to draw them. Last week when you were shading them, I had already drawn them for you and you just had to color them in. Well, we're going to talk today about how you can sketch them out in a way that you'll be able to draw them on your own in whatever shape or size you want, so that if you're drawing something, you'll be able to do that. So that's the first thing we're going to do. So in drawing our forms, we're going to start with the cube. For the cube, you want to start with a plain square or rectangle, whichever you'd like. So we're going to start with just 4 sides. Now you can use a ruler or a straight edge for this. That's fine if you want to get perfectly straight lines, or you can just sort of do it freehand. That's fine too. So we start with our square, and we have a nice flat square. Now, to make this turn into a cube, we're going to add some depth to it. Remember, we talked about our height and our width, and now we're going to add our depth. So I like to start in this top corner. We're going to just do a diagonal line away from the top corner. Now, once you have that, you're going to want to add a line to these 2 corners too. What's important is that these 2 corners have the same angle as the first one you draw. So if you were to draw this one straight out flat or down this way, or even a sharper angle, it's not going to look like a cube. It's going to look a little crooked. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow this angle. If you do have a ruler, or if you want to take another pencil, you can line it up with this corner and slide it down to see what your angle will look like at the other corner. You can also slide it across so that you can follow that angle. A ruler does work really well for this the first couple times you do it, so that you can get the hang of it. So you want to take and make your other line the same angle as your first one, and about the same length too. Mine looks a little crooked on camera. I think it's my camera angle, but they are the same if you're here with me. So then we're going to do the other one there too. So now we can just kind of connect the dots. We're going to go straight across and straight down, so that what you end up with is a cube. Like I said, my camera angle is a little weird there. Now it's a little bit better, so that you can see that mine looks more like a cube. Now, after the cube, we're going to talk about the sphere. Now the sphere, obviously, we just start with a plain circle and then we shade it in. There's no real way to make it look three-dimensional in your initial drawing. But a good trick to drawing a circle that's nice and circular is to start with a very lightly sketched sort of a plus sign. That way, if you make a nice even one where your lines are all the same length, then you have a guide to go around for your circle. So you can sort of sketch your circle in and take it around to the points around your plus sign. So that you end up with a pretty nice even circle. So that way you can start your sphere with a nice even circle and not an oval or sort of a crooked circle. This just helps a little bit. You also could use a compass, you could trace something, but if you don't have something circular to trace, then this is a good trick to go ahead and get yourself a nice circle. And then obviously you'd shade that in and have your sphere. I'm going to flip my paper over and we're going to talk about the cone and the cylinder. The cone is really very easy. You're going to start with what would be the top of a triangle, two nice even lines, and then you just want to make a nice curve that goes from one to the other. Now, the size of your curve depends on your drawing. It depends on how much of your cone you want to be able to shade curved out here. You could make it a little more shallow or even a little deeper. That's going to depend on what you're drawing and how it looks. So you can see how we can vary the curved part of our cone, and that's going to give us different effects in our final product. So where your curve is and how it's curved just kind of depends on what you're trying to draw. The same goes with the cylinder. The cylinder, you've got your two straight sides. And then your curve at the bottom. Now the thing to pay attention with the cylinder is that you want your curve at the bottom to match your curve at the top. So you want them to be about the same, because obviously a cylinder is going to have the same size circle on the top as it does on the bottom. And then you can just finish the top of your cylinder with about the same size curve, but going the other way. Because obviously with a cylinder, if your top and your bottom are the same size circle, they're going to have the same curve to them. But also, like with the cone, you can vary how much you curve this down. That would kind of depend on how you're looking at your cylinder. If you're looking at the top to where you can see a lot of it, then your curve is going to be a little bit deeper than it would be if you're looking at it sort of straight on. So that's the way you can vary your cones and your cylinders when you're drawing them, depending on what angle and what effect you're trying to achieve. So that's real quick and easy how to draw all four of your basic forms, and that will get you started really well with our next project. So now we know how to draw the forms. We know how to draw them and we know how to shade them. So now we're going to talk about how to put them all together. When you're learning to draw, part of learning to draw is learning to look at things and learning to see what they're made of. Everything is made up of these basic forms. If we put them together in different ways, we get different things. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do kind of a deconstructed drawing. We're going to think of something that you like to draw, or you can even look around at something maybe in your house that you would like to be able to draw. And we're going to separate it into its forms. What that's going to do is it's going to give us a sense of knowing how to put things together and how we need to incorporate them into a complete drawing. I did this one, and it is of a flower, and you can see that I took the flower, and this isn't very realistic looking, and we made the center a sphere, and the petals are cones, the stem is a cylinder, and then the leaves are also cones. What this does is it just helps us to get a sense of how we can put these forms together in a way that makes a complete drawing. So what I want you to do is I want you to think of something that you'd like to draw. Think of what its components are. Maybe if you were building it out of blocks, what size and shape blocks would you need? And then we're going to put it together in a drawing. I'm going to do another one for you so that you can see another example and maybe get some inspiration, and then you can do one on your own and see what you can come up with. So here we have my finished drawing. This is the second one I've shown you guys. I did a little man here, and you can see obviously he's not realistic, but you can see how I've given him a sphere for a head and for a hand. I've incorporated the cylinders for his arm and his body and his neck, and cubes for his legs and his feet. And then I gave him a little party hat so that I could put a cone in too. So you can see how taking things apart into their forms can be really fun and interesting. So now that we have taken our forms and we've made a drawing with them, we're going to go one step further. We're going to look at objects. We're going to talk about what forms we see and then how to combine them so we get a more realistic looking drawing than the last drawing that we did. So I have a few things to show you guys. The first is a book. This is a book that I really recommend. It's called Pencil Drawing Techniques. And in it, there's a lot about our forms and how to draw things. This page in particular is really neat because it shows us this picture here and this one down here and how they can be broken down into the different forms. Like this picture looks like something relatively complicated to draw, but if you really look at it, it's really two cylinders and a sphere. And now you all know how to draw that already. This one is even a little more complicated, but really it breaks down into a cone, half a sphere, and a cylinder. So you can see with these how being able to draw your basic forms can help you combine them into being able to draw much more complicated things. So after looking at that book and seeing how we can separate things, I have a few things for you guys to look at. If you want to go to my blog, there will be pictures of these. So in our next activity, if you want to use them, you can. The first thing we're going to look at is this cool little camera. And you can look at it and let's talk about what forms we see. First of all, the camera itself is a basic cube. Then the knob up here is a little cylinder. This knob is another little cube. This lens in the front is another little cylinder. So you can see even something pretty complicated like this little camera, you can very easily break it down into its basic forms. So this one is really cool. It'll be interesting to draw. The next one I have is actually a candle holder, and it's got a cube for a base. It's just a little sort of squatty cube. It's got a sphere for its top, and then all its little feet in here are like other little tiny spheres. So you can see how this, also something a little more complicated, now that you know how to draw your basic forms, is going to be pretty easy to draw. The final thing I have for you is this little vase. It's got basically a sphere here at its top. If you turn it over, you can really see how the bottom could be a cone with its pointy part chopped off. And then the top is pretty much just the little cylinder. So with this one, you're going to combine basically three of our basic forms in a way that it's going to result in this little vase. So like I said, I took pictures of all three of these. You can pick one of them if you'd like to draw them, or if you have something else laying around your house that you'd like to draw, or even if you want to look up a picture of something that interests you online that you'd like to try, that's just fine. So in our next activity, we are going to draw a real thing, and we're going to see how well we can combine all of our forms and end up with a really cool picture at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and draw one for you. I'm going to do this little vase. That way you guys can see step by step how I do it. If you want to follow along with me, that is fine. Or if you want to try it yourself, you can do that too. So here is my drawing of the vase. I hope you guys could see how I started with our forms and then erased some of my guidelines and shaded it in. I do have some smudges over here on the side that I'm going to have to take care of, but for the most part you can see how we can then take the forms that we know, combine them, and end up with a finished drawing. So now you guys should have a finished picture that really combines all of the skills that we've learned over the past few weeks. I hope you can really see how each thing is building on the next, how our pencil control we learned in the very first class has helped us get here to where we can draw a very realistic picture. Each step is very important, and you can always practice everything that we've learned. Throughout the week this week, if you want to keep practicing, if you want to take a look at some of these other things that I put the pictures of up and try your hand at drawing them, or even look around your house and see what different things you can draw, what different forms they're made of. Learn to really start looking at things and identifying what forms you see and figuring out how they combine to make that object. So next week, we are going to be talking a little bit about composition. You're going to need just some plain paper again, a pencil, and you can also bring some colored pencils again next week. So that's all for today, and I will see you all next week.